There's a pattern happening in relationships that most people never see. It's subtle, it's powerful, and it controls lives. You've seen it, maybe you've lived it. There's a person who swears they don't need anyone. They say they value independence. They pride themselves on being self-sufficient. They pull away when things get close. They detach when emotions rise. They say, I just don't want drama. And yet, watch closely, they stay obsessed with one type of person. Not just attracted, not just interested, obsessed. The emotionally intense one, the unavailable one, the one who keeps them guessing, the one who activates chaos instead of calm. Why? Here's the truth that shocks people. Avoidants don't fear love. They fear losing control. They don't avoid connection because they don't want it. They avoid it because real intimacy exposes the parts of them they've worked their whole lives to protect. So what do? They choose someone who feels safe in an unsafe way. Let me explain. If you choose someone emotionally unavailable, you never have to go all in. If you choose someone inconsistent, you never have to fully surrender. If you choose someone who triggers longing instead of stability, you can stay in pursuit mode instead of vulnerability mode. Obsession becomes the perfect distraction from intimacy. It feels intense. It feels passionate. It feels alive. But intensity is not intimacy. Intensity keeps your nervous system activated. Intimacy creates your hurt to be open. And here's the deeper layer, the divine principle behind this pattern. We are drawn to what is familiar, not what is healthy. If love in your early life felt uncertain, conditional, distant, or unpredictable, your nervous system coded that as normal. So when you meet someone stable, kind, and consistent, it feels foreign. It feels boring. It feels suspicious. But when you meet someone who mirrors that early uncertainty, suddenly you feel chemistry. That's not destiny. That's programming. Avoidants stay obsessed with one type of person because that person allows them to relive the wound without ever healing it. They get to chase love without risking full exposure. They get to desire love without fully receiving it. They get to stay powerful instead of vulnerable. But here's the cost. You cannot experience divine partnership while hiding behind emotional armor. Love is not meant to be chased from a distance. It's meant to be experienced in presence. Real connection asks something of you. It asks surrender. It asks truth. It asks you to be seen without your defenses. And that terrifies the avoidant heart. But here's what I want you to understand. The very thing you fear is the doorway to freedom. You think if you open up, you'll lose yourself. In reality, when you open up, you finally find yourself. When you stop chasing the familiar wound and start choosing conscious connection, everything changes. You stop mistaking adrenaline for alignment. You stop confusing longing with love. You stop idolizing people who cannot meet you. And instead, you step into partnership as a creator, not a reactor. The reason avoidants stay obsessed with one type of person is not because they're unlucky in love. It's because their soul is trying to show them the exact place they need to grow. Life will keep sending you the same lesson until you learn it. Not as punishment, as preparation. The moment you become aware of the pattern, you reclaim your power. You can say, I will no longer choose what confirms my fear. I will no longer call chaos chemistry. I will no longer hide from the very connection I desire. And when you make that shift, when you decide that growth is more important than comfort, you break the cycle. Love stops being a battlefield. It becomes a sanctuary. You are not designed to stay guarded. You are designed to expand. And the shock isn't that avoidants stay obsessed with one type of person. The shock is this end. They've been one courageous decision away from the love they truly want all along. The question is not whether you can change. The question is, are you ready to choose growth over familiarity? Because the moment you do, everything transforms. Avoidant personalities live in a quiet inner contradiction. On the surface, they appear independent, strong, even emotionally self-contained. They pride themselves on not needing anyone. They often define themselves by their autonomy, their productivity, their ability to handle life alone. But beneath that composed exterior is a powerful, often unacknowledged craving for deep connection. This is the paradox. They long for intimacy, yet fear vulnerability. Every human being is wired for attachment. The need to bond, to be seen, to be understood is not weakness. It is biology. It is spiritual design. Avoidant individuals are no exception. They want love. They want companionship. They want someone who understands them without judgment. But somewhere along the way, vulnerability became associated with danger. For many avoidant personalities, early emotional experiences shaped this pattern. Perhaps expressing needs led to disappointment. Perhaps showing emotion resulted in criticism, rejection, or being ignored. Maybe love was present but inconsistent. The child learned an adaptive strategy. If I rely on myself, I won't get hurt. That strategy once provided protection. But what protects you at one stage of life can imprison you at another. As adults, avoidants may enter relationships with genuine interest and attraction. In the beginning, connection feels exciting and safe because emotional depth hasn't yet been required. There is room to impress, to charm, to explore without fully exposing. But as intimacy grows, as expectations rise, as conversations become deeper, as emotional dependency begins to form, something shifts internally. Their nervous system interprets closeness as threat, not because love is dangerous, but because being truly known means risking rejection. Vulnerability means someone could see the parts of them they've carefully guarded. It means giving another person the power to hurt them. And for someone whose early experiences taught them that emotional exposure leads to pain, this feels intolerable. So they pull back. They may create distance through busyness, logic, or subtle criticism. They may convince themselves that something is missing in the relationship. They might suddenly feel overwhelmed or trapped. Internally, it's not the partner they're rejecting. It's the vulnerability the partner represents. Yet, even while distancing themselves, the desire for closeness doesn't disappear. It remains active, often expressed through longing, fantasy, or attraction to emotionally unavailable people. This allows them to feel desire without facing full emotional exposure. This inner conflict creates tension. They want connection, but resist the very behaviors that create it. They want love, but fear the surrender it requires. They want someone to stay, but struggle to let someone truly see them. Understanding this paradox is essential. Avoidant behavior is not a lack of heart. It is a protective mechanism rooted in fear. Beneath the walls is a person who deeply desires intimacy, but must first learn that vulnerability is not weakness, and that being seen does not automatically mean being abandoned. Avoidant individuals are often magnetically drawn to emotionally unavailable or high-intensity partners, and this attraction is rarely accidental. On the surface, it may look like chemistry, passion, or coincidence, but underneath, there is a psychological pattern at work. An emotionally unavailable partner creates distance by default. They may be inconsistent, overly independent, preoccupied with work, healing from a past relationship, or simply unable to commit fully. For someone with avoidant tendencies, this dynamic feels strangely comfortable. Why? Because it allows desire without demanding full emotional exposure. If the other person is unavailable, the avoidant never has to completely open up. The relationship never becomes fully secure. So vulnerability can remain partial. There is always a reason to hold something back. In this way, the avoidant can experience longing, attraction, and even obsession without facing the deeper fear of true intimacy. High-intensity partners create a similar effect. These relationships are often filled with emotional spikes. Passionate connection followed by distance, deep conversations followed by conflict, closeness followed by unpredictability. This roller coaster stimulates the nervous system. The adrenaline can feel like love. The emotional swings can feel like depth. But intensity is not the same as apathy. For avoidant personalities, intensity provides distraction. When the relationship is chaotic or dramatic, the focus stays on managing the ups and downs rather than building steady closeness. The emotional energy is spent reacting instead of revealing. The avoidant can stay engaged while still avoiding their deepest fears. There is also an element of control in these dynamics. With an unavailable partner, the avoidant may unconsciously feel safer because the relationship never becomes fully secure. If commitment never fully solidifies, then neither does the risk of being deeply hurt. They can remain partly detached, always with one foot out the door. Additionally, emotionally unavailable partners often trigger pursuit, and pursuit feels active. It feels empowering. The avoidant may tell themselves they are trying, fighting for love, or working on the relationship. But in reality, the focus remains on winning attention rather than sustaining intimacy. It is easier to chase someone's validation than to sit still and allow oneself to be completely known. There is also familiarity at play. If early attachment experiences involved inconsistency or emotional distance, the nervous system may interpret unpredictability as normal. Stability can feel foreign, even suspicious. So when they meet someone grounded and emotionally available, it may feel dull. There are no dramatic highs, no urgent longing, no need to chase. But with high intensity or unavailable partners, the emotional charge feels alive. The avoidant mistakes activation for compatibility. In truth, this pattern protects them from confronting their deepest fear, being fully chosen and fully seen. Because when someone is consistently present, emotionally open and committed, the avoidant can no longer hide behind distance. The spotlight turns inward, and that is where vulnerability begins. Obsession can feel powerful. It can feel romantic, consuming, almost sacred. Thoughts revolve around one person. Every message matters. Every interaction carries weight. The mind replays conversations, imagines future scenarios, analyzes subtle shifts in tone. There is longing, anticipation, even a kind of emotional electricity. But for avoidant personalities, obsession often serves a hidden purpose. It becomes a safe substitute for real closeness. Real intimacy requires presence. It requires mutual openness, consistent effort, emotional transparency. It asks two people to sit in uncertainty together to reveal fears, insecurities, and needs. That level of exposure can feel overwhelming to someone who has learned to protect themselves through distance. Obsession, on the other hand, happens largely in the mind. It allows a person to feel deeply without actually stepping into vulnerability. You can fantasize about someone without revealing your flaws. You can crave someone without negotiating daily emotional needs. You can long for someone without having to share your full truth. In this way, obsession creates the illusion of connection while preserving emotional safety. The avoidant individual may tell themselves they are deeply in love, and in some ways the feelings are real. The attraction is real, the desire is real, but much of the intensity exists internally rather than relationally. It is fueled by imagination, by projection, by the excitement of possibility rather than the work of partnership. When a relationship remains slightly out of reach, perhaps the other person is inconsistent or unavailable, obsession has room to grow. The distance feeds the fantasy, the lack of closure fuels curiosity. The uncertainty keeps the mind engaged, and here is the subtle protection. As long as the connection is incomplete, full vulnerability is never required. Obsession keeps the focus on the other person. It keeps attention outward. Why did they say that? What do they feel? Will they come back? The mind stays busy analyzing them instead of examining oneself. True intimacy turns that focus inward. It asks, what do I feel? What do I need? Can I communicate this honestly? For someone who fears vulnerability, that internal exposure can feel more threatening than longing theft. From a distance, there is also a sense of control in obsession. When connection exists mostly in fantasy, you control the narrative. You imagine their thoughts. You shape the story. You replay ideal moments. Reality, however, is unpredictable. Real partnership involves compromise, discomfort, and emotional risk. Obsession allows passion without accountability. It provides emotional stimulation without sustained exposure. It feels safer to yearn for someone who is slightly unavailable than to build a steady bond with someone who invites you to fully show up. The tragedy is that obsession often feels profound. It feels like destiny. But in many cases, it is the mind's strategy to experience emotional intensity without confronting the deeper fear of being truly known. The one type an avoidant keeps chasing is rarely random. It is usually a mirror, a reflection of an old emotional wound that has not yet been healed. What feels like preference or coincidence is often repetition. Human beings are wired for familiarity. The nervous system does not prioritize what is healthy. It prioritizes what is known. If early attachment experiences were shaped by inconsistency, emotional distance, criticism, or unpredictability, those patterns become embedded as a blueprint. Even if they were painful, they become recognizable. And what is recognizable feels safe. So when an avoidant repeatedly gravitates toward the same type of partner, the emotionally distant one, the hyper-independent one, the unpredictable one, it is not just attraction. It is the subconscious seeking something unfinished. There is often a silent hope beneath this pattern. Maybe this time it will end differently. If a parent was distant, the adult may pursue distant partners, unconsciously trying to earn the love that once felt out of reach. If affection was conditional, they may chase partners whose approval must be won. If vulnerability once led to rejection, they may choose people who never fully allow closeness so they never have to risk complete exposure. This repetition is not weakness. It is an attempt at mastery. The psyche tries to recreate the original wound in hopes of rewriting the you come. It believes that if it can finally make the unavailable person stay, finally soften the distant partner, finally feel chosen by someone who once would not choose them, then the old pain will dissolve. But instead of healing the wound, the pattern reinforces it. Each time the relationship ends in distance or disappointment, it confirms the original belief: love is unreliable. If I get too close, I will be hurt. I must protect myself. The avoidant then doubles down on their defenses, believing the world has proven them right. This is why the fixation on one type can feel so intense. The connection is layered with past emotion. It is not just about the present partner. It is about unresolved history. The stakes feel higher because the inner child is involved, still longing for reassurance, still hoping to be chosen. Meanwhile, healthier options may feel uninteresting or even uncomfortable. A stable, emotionally available partner does not activate the old wound. There is no unfinished story to replay. There is no dramatic tension to resolve. And without that activation, the connection can feel unfamiliar. But unfamiliar does not mean wrong. It often means growth. Until the original wound is acknowledged and processed, the avoidant may continue circling the same archetype, believing it is chemistry or fate. In truth, it is memory. It is the past asking to be healed then repeated. And healing begins not by changing the type of person they pursue, but by understanding the pain that first shaped the pursuit. Familiar pain has a strange comfort to it. It may hurt, but it is predictable. You know how it unfolds. You recognize the signs. You understand the emotional terrain. And for the avoidant personality, predictability, even painful predictability, feels safer than stepping into the unknown territory of healthy love. Unfamiliar love is quiet. It is steady. It does not trigger adrenaline or urgency. It does not require chasing or proving. It simply shows up consistently and calmly. And for someone whose nervous system was shaped around emotional unpredictability, that calm can feel unsettling. When you grow up adapting to inconsistency, your body learns to stay alert. You become attuned to shifts in tone, subtle changes in mood, moments of withdrawal. You learn to read the room. Your nervous system operates on heightened awareness. Over time, that state of activation becomes normal. So when you encounter stability, your body does not immediately register it as safety. It registers it as unfamiliar. And unfamiliar feels risky. There is a psychological principle at work here. The brain prefers known outcomes over uncertain ones, even if the known outcome is painful. If rejection has been experienced repeatedly, it becomes expected. If emotional distance has been common, it becomes understandable. There is less shock in repeating what you already know. Healthy love, however, introduces new variables. What if someone truly stays? What if they see your flaws and still accept you? What if you relax your guard and they do not leave? That level of safety requires surrendering old defenses. It requires trusting something you have not yet experienced consistently. For the avoidant, surrender can feel more dangerous than heartbreak. Heartbreak confirms their worldview. It reinforces the belief that distance is necessary for survival. But being deeply loved challenges that belief. It invites a redefinition of identity. If you are no longer the self-sufficient protector who needs no one, who are you? This is why familiar pain can feel strangely reassuring. It validates existing narratives. I knew this would happen. This is why I don't open up. There is a sense of control in predicting disappointment. You are prepared. You are guarded. You are guarded. You are not blindsided. Unfamiliar love removes that armor. It asks you to soften. It asks you to receive rather than defend. And receiving can be harder than giving because it exposes need. The tragedy is that many avoidant individuals mistake emotional calm for lack of passion. They interpret stability as boredom. In reality, what feels dull may simply be peace. What feels uneventful may actually be security. But until the nervous system learns that safety is not a threat, the pull toward familiar pain remains strong. The mind chooses what it understands, even if it suffers in the process. And so the cycle continues, not because healthy love is unavailable, but because it feels foreign. Patterns do not break on their own. They repeat, quietly, persistently, until they are consciously interrupted. For the avoidant personality, the cycle of pursuing distance, mistaking intensity for intimacy, and retreating from vulnerability can continue for years, even decades. Not because they lack desire for love, but because they have not yet confronted the fear that governs their choices. Awareness is the turning point. As long as the pattern remains unconscious, it feels like fate. I just keep meeting the wrong people. There are no emotionally available partners. Something is always missing. These narratives protect the ego. They place the problem outside the self, and as long as the issue appears external, there is no urgency to change internally. But when the avoidant begins to recognize the repetition, the same emotional dynamic in different faces, the same emotional dynamic in different faces, the same attraction to unavailable energy, the same withdrawal when closeness deepens, something shifts. The pattern becomes visible, and once it is visible, it can no longer hide behind coincidence. Confronting the fear of emotional exposure is not dramatic. It is quiet and deeply personal. It begins with questions. What am I afraid will happen if someone truly sees me? What do I believe about vulnerability? When did I first decide that closeness was unsafe? These questions often lead back to early experiences. Moments when emotional needs were dismissed, times when expressing feelings led to shame, situations where dependence resulted in disappointment. The nervous system learned to equate openness with danger, and that lesson, though outdated, continues to run in the background. Breaking the cycle requires more than intellectual insight. It demands emotional courage. It means staying present when the urge to withdraw appears. It means communicating discomfort instead of disappearing. It means choosing a partner who feels safe, even if that safety initially feels unfamiliar. There will be resistance. The body may tense when conversations deepen. The mind may search for flaws to justify distance. Doubt may whisper that something is wrong simply because it is calm. This is the moment of transformation, not when fear disappears, but when it is faced. Growth happens in small decisions, responding instead of retreating, sharing a truth that feels vulnerable, allowing reassurance to land instead of deflecting it. Each act of openness rewires the nervous system. Each moment of staying present teaches the body that closeness does not equal catastrophe. The cycle continues only when fear remains unchallenged. But when the avoidant chooses to lean into discomfort rather than escape it, the old blueprint begins to fade. What once felt threatening becomes manageable. What once felt overwhelming becomes intimate. The pattern does not end because the world changes. It ends because the individual chooses to meet their fear directly. And in doing so, discovers that vulnerability is not the enemy, but the doorway to the love they have always desired. Thank you for your time, your presence, and your willingness to grow beyond old patterns. Goodbye for now. May your journey forward be guided by courage, clarity, and deeper love.